Alright, so the key to writing good objective is to make sure they're SMART, meaning specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and targeted. To have SMART objectives, they need four components: audience, behavior, condition, and degree. The audience is the students or person the objective is written for. The behavior is the observable and measurable action. The condition describes what is happening in the situation, and the degree is the level of performance expected or how the behavior is measured. Objectives should be guiding your lesson planning after you've reviewed the standards you need to cover, not the other way around. I had to figure that out the hard way. So it's easier to understand when you have an example to refer to, so I'll go through a few. And the examples I use, the students will always be my audience. Identifying behavior, the action verb, can be the trickiest though. So I've learned it's extremely helpful to use the Bloom's taxonomy as a guide, especially an action verb list for the 6 levels of the cognitive domain. Your objectives will range between the 6 levels depending on how complex you want their level of thinking to be. These 6 levels are knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. But it may be easier to remember them by their action labels of the revised taxonomy, which is remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So, as I mentioned earlier, it is important that your lesson planning is aligned with the state standards. But consider the state standards as the bare minimum. Usually the standards describe what students need to know or understand at the most fundamental level, which isn't surprising considering Bloom's findings show 95% of test questions requiring students to think at the lowest possible level. For example, a language and literacy standard in the Arizona Early Learning Standard says, with modeling and support, uses category labels and names objects within a category. Example given, fruit, vegetable, animal, etc. In the example ADE provides, the child says, I want a carrot and broccoli when asked what vegetable she wants. In this case, the child is remembering and recalling items from a category, but it's not clear that these are really vegetables she wants. Perhaps they are only the vegetables she remembers, so she lists them. Remembering is the lowest level of thinking, but with the taxonomy guide, your students can go far beyond just recalling and remembering information. In my own objectives assignment for my master's class, I used the same standard but advanced that level of thinking. In my objective, I wrote that the students will find a collection of at least 5 items in the classroom and take turns sharing out loud the label for the category that the items belong to. For example, a child may collect play food from the dramatic play area and tell his classmates that the category is food. And another student may gather a crayon, marker, paper, paintbrush, and glue and label them art supplies. The behavior is collecting items and labeling the category they belong to. The condition is that students may collect any materials they can find in the classroom. The teacher can observe which items are collected, and the teacher can measure their success according to the accuracy of the label and number of items. So, the number of items and appropriate label is the degree to which the child is being measured against. To reiterate, the child is applying their knowledge and understanding of categories in a new situation to locate items and label them as a group. Thus, they reach the application level of learning. Something to keep in mind is that using words from the action verb list does not necessarily imply that it meets that level of cognitive learning. For example, an objective that says students will draw an item that belongs to the category of vegetables doesn't mean that the child reaches the application level of cognition because the objective uses an action verb draw. The child is actually identifying an item that belongs to a category and producing the answer in the form of a picture, thus only reaching the comprehension level. When writing the objective, really consider the goal of the cognitive level you want the child to reach before deciding your action verb. That's a very, very simple mistake that I made a lot when I first started writing my objectives. So, to sum it all up, get an action verb list for taxonomies, Bloom's taxonomy, know your standards, then write SMART objectives that are observable and measurable. So I really hope that's helpful. If you have any more questions, please just feel free to ask.